Hello and welcome back to this week's Teachable Tuesday series. I'm your host Victoria, and this week we are going to talk about God's plan for the family. So in order for us to better understand God's plan for the family, it would be good for us to go back to the creation account in Genesis and looking at how God forms man and woman and his plan inevitably for the both of them. So the account in Genesis 1 talks about God's creation and how he creates the heavens, the earth, the birds, the other animals, the seas, and then he creates man and woman. And it says in Genesis, man and woman he created them, not man and man or woman and woman, but man and woman, both who are uniquely complementary to each other, both who are different but also complement one another. And then what do we know as God's command to man and woman in Genesis? Well, he says to them as their first command, be fruitful and multiply. So, man and woman, Adam and Eve, in a marriage who are looking to procreate children, forms a family. We can see that this is the first family created on this earth. So in other words, marriage involves one man and one woman joined together in the covenantal bonds of marriage with the intention of being open to the possibility of new human life. So when we talk about the love of the spouses, the love of the parents for one another, we speak of 4 different terms that the church describes, and it's free, total, faithful, and fruitful love. Free meaning the spouses are freely entering into the covenant of marriage, so there's no duress, there's no pressure on either side for them to enter into the marriage. They freely enter into it. Then we have total, so you promise to give the totality of yourself to that other person in an act of self-gift and allow them to receive you as self-gift. Then we have faithful. The spouses promise to be faithful to one another in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, and so on. And of course, fruitful. They have to be open to the possibility of human life. There cannot be any roadblocks in that way. So, this is why we say that marriage is between one man and one woman, united in the marital bonds of marriage, being open to the possibility of having children. So in other words, a man and a woman united in marriage together with children form a family. So if you look at the duties of the parents in the family, what would that pretty much involve? I would say that would involve raising the children in the faith, loving them, guiding them, protecting them above all else, things like that. So what's the role then of children in the context of a family? Well, I would say the main duty as children of our parents is to love our parents, to respect them, and to allow them to guide us in that way of faith. As we see detailed in the 10 Commandments, one of them is to honor thy father and thy mother. Now, sometimes I can understand that can be easier said than done. Naturally, in families, when you're living in close quarters, living together, it can be kind of hard to be patient with our families, to be patient even with ourselves in that context. But this is what we are striving to do. This is what we are striving for. When we see the account in the New Testament of the finding of the child Jesus in the temple, what do we hear towards the end of that passage? We see that Jesus obeys his father and his mother. So if the child Jesus, who is totally perfect in all of his ways, honored and respected the parents that he had been given, then we should be doing the same thing. We should strive to love, honor, and respect our families to the highest degree. I don't know if you've ever considered this question before, but I think it'd be good to think about and to reflect on what God's dreams are for family life, how he wants us as Christians to live out family life well. I think it'd be good to go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church to see what that would look like. And in paragraph 2204, it says this: the Christian family constitutes a specific revelation and realization of ecclesial communion, and for this reason, it can and should be called a domestic church. It is a community of faith, hope, and charity. It assumes singular importance in the church, as is evident in the New Testament. So what is God's plan for the family? What is his desires for us as families? He desires us to be like another church in the world, to be a domestic church, and not only to be that, but to be a light to the world that is ever growing into darkness. I know what you may be thinking right now. You may be thinking about your own family saying, well, I wouldn't say we're exactly like a domestic church. We've got a lot of brokenness, we've got a lot of sin going on. We're not like the Holy Family who is so perfect, although we can look to them as guides for us on the journey. But I heard it once said that the church is not a museum for saints, but it's a hospital for sinners. And so if you're feeling that brokenness within your own family, maybe some broken ties, not to fear, because God is a God of redeeming love, and he desires to redeem everything. And he can even redeem your family life as well. As I said before, we can look to the Holy Family as our guide along the way for God's plan for the family. And so with that, I want to issue a challenge for this week. I encourage you strongly, if you haven't already, to begin praying the Rosary. There is nothing more powerful of a weapon in this world than the beauty of the Rosary. Specifically this week, I encourage you to pray the joyful mysteries of the Rosary and meditate on the beauty and the humble beginnings of the Holy Family and how they loved each other so well and the fidelity between each and every one of them, and to reflect on God's plan for the family. And as an added challenge, as an added bonus, I encourage you to maybe get your family together at night or in the mornings whenever you have time and to pray the Rosary together. It's a great way for families to get together, to unite under God, and to increase that communion within your own home. That way it can really become more of a domestic church. That's all the time we have, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys!